just like to thank you all for tuning in today and to join us as we present some of the key points on owning a home back in Jamaica. I'd like to thank IDS and JaDiF for putting on this webinar and for inviting us to present today. It is a pleasure being here and being offered the opportunity. So you started off by making a very key and relevant point, Madam Chair, which is that we need to ensure that when buying your home and your real estate back in Jamaica, you are not just doing a gentleman's shake of the hand, because that is not legal, that is not binding. And what I have seen from experience happen, many persons are left holding the black scandal bag where they have paid on for properties and they cannot get any title for it. So my purpose here today is to outline the legal stages from when you have identified the property and you're ready to purchase it until the keys and the letters of possession are given to you and you're ready to enter into your brand, whether it be an apartment, a townhouse, a standalone home, or even land. So I'm just going to wait until this slide has been put up and we can start. Now, you hit on a good point, Ms. Foster, when you indicated that you need your lawyer. And the process of buying a home in Jamaica is different from other jurisdictions. Unlike in the US, where also practice, we don't meet at a table for closing and exchange key. There's no broker that's involved. Purchasing a home in Jamaica is lawyer driven. And I'm not saying that because I'm a lawyer and I want to collect your money. I'm saying that because the system that exists in Jamaica, it's very robust. It's called the torrent system and it's different from other systems, land system in Jamaica. Why it is most robust? Because when you end up getting your title, it is one of the most difficult titles for anybody to challenge or to set aside. It's what we refer to as an indefeasible title. It means that once your name goes on it, unless you can prove fraud or any other circumstances, you are a true owner. We don't have multiple title system in Jamaica. We have one title system. And as a result, you purchase a home, you're supposed to be issued a title. Now, let us look at the preliminary stage, which I believe that Leighton and others touched on, which is identifying your home. Once the vendor places the property on the market for sale, sometimes they do it individually. In the rural areas, they tend to use word of mouth, advertisement in the Sunday paper. I'm sure some of you would have access to the Sunday Gleaner, would see properties being advertised. And what has been a new trend is that it has been advertised through realtors. I'm just going to crave a moment. I just want to bring up the screen and see. Forgive me, lawyers, sometimes we're not techie, you know. When I went to law school, we wrote our exams. Let me commence the slideshow. Yes, here we are. Thank you for your patience. So the preliminary stage, as I was just to repeat, the vendor places the property on the market for sale. He uses his own efforts or he employs a realtor to assist him. Oftentimes, vendors do not value the place. However, it is recommended because you want to have an idea how you're going to price your property for sale. And oftentimes people come to me, Ms. J, but what about the price that you see on the tax receipt? The value that is given for the purpose of payment tax is just for the raw land, does not encompass the buildings. And so that is not oftentimes an accurate guidance. And to be honest, it is oftentimes lower than what the property is really valued. So persons may consider doing a valuation of the property before they put it up on the market for sale. Once the property is up on the market and the purchaser identifies it and likes it, then they may make an offer. If they're using a realtor, an offer sheet will be prepared and it will then contain all the particulars, your name, your address, your occupation, your TRN, which is required now for POCA purposes and also for FATCA purposes for those who live in the US. And that it will also include your vendor's attorney information and the purchaser's attorney information. Once that is prepared, the vendor then would instruct his or her attorney to prepare a draft agreement for sale. And why we say it is a draft agreement for sale, because you know attorneys, they say we love to argue. We have to ensure that the terms that are inserted into the contract are favorable or at least comfortable to both parties. Because as Ms. Foster said, the word of mouth thing not going to work. And if, for instance, there is a dispute as to the sale of the property and it ends up into court, the court will only have consideration to what is written in the contract. So a good contract, a properly drafted contract is critical. Once the attorneys go back and forth as to settle as to the terms to be included in the contract, then now the contract is settled. At this stage, any attorney that is worth their money is to ensure that the purchaser does a check on the property. Just like you do background check on individuals, you need to do background check on the property. And this includes doing a survey for those who are taking a mortgage, doing valuation of the property, and also checking the title to ensure that the person who's selling you the land actually owns the land. And also to ensure that there are no liens or caveats or anybody else claiming to own the land. This is particular and very important, especially when we're buying what we call unregistered land. That is land that don't have no title and passed down through generations, and the only proof they have is receipts and letters and probably a will. Those land tend to be difficult. And if it is that you're purchasing by and being financed by a mortgage, you will have to get a title. Once the agreement is settled, it is sent then to the purchaser's attorney for the purchasers to sign it. The purchaser going to have it witnessed either by their attorney who represents them, a notary public, or my favorite, a Jamaica consulate officer. So you can go to any of the consulate office across the world, make an appointment and have one of the consulate officer witness your signature. Once you have signed it and you're sending it back to your attorney, you have to also send the purchase price, deposit, which is, as Leighton indicated, anywhere between 10 and 20%. It can be higher if you're buying a property from an estate, as well as a half cost preparation for the agreement for sale. And at the end of the presentation, I will outline the cost associated. The vendor also will have to sign this agreement and then return a finalized, signed and dated copy to the purchaser for the process of mortgage. Now, unlike other countries, you are only in a contract when it is signed by the purchaser and the vendor, and when the deposit is paid, as well as a half cost agreement for sale, not before. Persons think that the process starts from you identifying the land and you sign up with the realtor. No, the sale process legally begins once it is signed by, the document is signed by all the parties and the deposit is paid. Now, depending on whether you're buying cash or you're using the services of VMBS or National Housing Trust, how long the sale takes to close will be determined by what process you're financing. If you're buying the land cash, you can have your home within 30 to 45 days. However, if you're using a mortgage, because of the additional steps that Leighton outlined to you as a mortgage process, it will extend the process an additional 90 to 120 days to close. You will have to need to submit all the documents to your mortgage company. And normally your attorney does that for you because it sets out for the mortgage company certain deadlines to meet, such as when they need to turn over the money and give an undertaking to the vendor. So it's critical that you pay attention to that and you inform your attorney whether you're going to use financing or you're going to pay for the property cash. While this is being done, the vendor also is going to turn around and pay the taxes using the deposit. Now, taxes, you cannot do any form of transfer in Jamaica without paying the taxes. I don't believe it can be done anywhere in the world. But the taxes, which I will outline at the end of the presentation, are paid from the deposit. So the vendor pays it in advance for you, the purchaser, and then the purchaser reimburses at the end. Now, we spoke about certain terms in the contract, and one of the terms that we need to focus on is when the mortgage company is to issue the letter of undertaking or commitment. From my experience, this is where we need to sometimes be very vigilant to ensure that the deadline is met, because it is only when the vendor gets the LOU, as we call it loosely, or the LOC, that they will then proceed to prepare the transfer form to effect the transfer, to put the purchaser's name on the title. They are not obligated by law to do that before. So normally if you have a good attorney, and we know, and we're familiar with the various mortgage company, we know whether or not we're going to insist that it is 50 days or 60 days from the signing of the contract, to allow the purchaser time, to give their mortgage company time to prepare the LOU and LOC. Once that is given and accepted, and I have to emphasize accepted, because vendors' attorney are not obligated to accept every LOU or any LOC that is given to them. And so that is why it's critical when you are choosing your attorney to do your due diligence to make sure that the attorney does not have any, how should I put it, any situation that may render them being unable to give a proper LOC. Once the LOC is accepted, the vendor will then turn around and issue the transfer form for both the purchaser and the vendor to sign again. And these will be submitted to the mortgage company, or in the case where the property is being acquired cash, it will be submitted to the National Land Agency for processing. When it is submitted to the National Land Agency for processing, of course, you have to pay an additional set of fees, what we call registration fees. And this process has improved significantly in a sense that you can actually pay for expedited services now at the National Land Agency and have your title transferred in a day, but the average time is between 7 to 14 days. Once this transfer has been completed, then the vendor or the mortgage company will notify the purchaser that the transfer has been done and that they are now ready to be paid the balance of the money. And once the balance of the money has been paid, then the title and the keys will be turned over either to the purchaser if they are purchasing cash, or the title will be held by the mortgage company until the balance of the mortgage has been paid off. So this takes us now, what is the cost associated? Leighton touched on some of the cost from a mortgage company's perspective, but there are other costs that you need to know. For example, you need to know about your legal fees cost, because this is critical. As I mentioned before, buying a property in Jamaica, the whole process is lawyer driven. All the documents that are necessary to effect the transfer is prepared by attorneys. From whether it is your personal attorney, which is the purchaser's attorney or the vendor's attorney, even the mortgage documents are prepared in-house by the mortgage company's attorney. So you have to have an idea as to how much you are going to have to come up with when you start this venture. Personally, I have asked my clients to ensure that they have their pre-approval letter, because it is a binding agreement. And oftentimes when you enter this agreement, you may not be able to come out of the agreement, or if you are able to come out of the agreement, there are going to be financial consequences, such as your deposit being forfeited. If you hire a good attorney, such as the one here at MJ Law Global, we can oftentimes craft the agreement so that you do not forfeit your deposit. The purchasers generally pay anywhere between 2 to 5% of the purchase price for legal fees. The vendor will pay 3 to 5% of the purchase price for legal fees. Each person pays their own attorney. And it is critical, and I notice a practice in Jamaica where oftentimes, especially in the rural area, it has happened, I've seen it, where persons want to use one attorney because they figure that they will save cost. We are cautioned against that as attorneys. And I also caution you not to do it, because if a conflict arises, you're placing the attorney in a position as to who is he going to defend. Is he going to defend the purchaser, or is he going to defend the vendor? And oftentimes your interests cannot be represented. You can't have one attorney representing two different interests, because the interest of the vendor is separate from the interest of the purchaser. The vendor sometimes wants to get more money. The purchaser sometimes wants to get as fair as possible a price for the property. The agreement for sale, there's a cost associated, separate and apart from the legal fees that we spoke about. And this cost for preparation of the agreement for sale is to be paid directly to the vendor. Because oftentimes we enter into agreements and for whatever reason, they're not qualified for the mortgage, the sale has to be aborted. But the vendor's attorney would have already prepared that agreement for sale. Under the laws in Jamaica, they are to be paid separate for that preparation. Thankfully, that cost is shared equally between the vendor and the purchaser. And as I indicated initially in the presentation, when you are commencing the agreement or commencing the sale and you sign the agreement, you also have to pay this half cost along with the deposit. Stamp duty. Very pleased that stamp duty has now been reduced significantly and it is now fixed at $5,000. Thank you, Minister Clark. And this also shared between the vendor and the purchaser. So back in the days before this amendment in 2019, you were paying 2% of the purchase price. The government thought it fit to reduce it and we welcome it. And it is now $5,000, each party paying 2,500 Jamaican dollars. Let us talk about the registration fee. You are not the owner of the home until your name is placed on the title. And your name is placed at the title at the National Land Agency and they charge a fee for this. Again, this fee is shared equally between the vendor and the purchaser. The vendor pays 0.25%, the purchaser pays 0.25%. And this is a cost, as I indicated before, that the vendor would have upfront out of deposit, and then you, the purchaser, will refund the vendor before closing. Oftentimes, depending on how much you qualify for a mortgage, this cost is wrapped up into your mortgage processing and your mortgage approval amount, and it is paid over directly to the vendor's attorney. If that is not the case, you would have to pay into your purchaser's attorney account before it is closed so that they could turn over this amount of money, because they're not going to transfer the property into your name until they're satisfied that all the fees are being paid. Transfer tax, like stamp duty, has been reduced significantly, and instead of being 5%, it is now 2% of the value of the purchase price. And this again was reduced by Minister Clark in 2019. This, however, is paid solely by the vendor. There's a saying that I always say to my clients: when you're buying a house, the purchaser have to find more money, an additional 20% over what the house value, and the vendor will get less. This is one of the deductions from the purchase price, which the vendor will not be able to recuperate, and that is called the vendor's transfer tax. Leighton spoke about certain costs, which I would like to highlight, which is the surveyor and evaluation fees. When you're purchasing a property in Jamaica, you cannot be qualified for a mortgage until you produce a surveyor's report and a valuation fee. Now, many persons don't see the value of it, but it is critical. A surveyor's report is going to identify any breaches on the property. And we know in Jamaica, we love to build on carport, build on veranda, build on many things. And oftentimes it's not built in accordance with the code. And so depending on how bad the breach is, which would have been identified in the surveyor's report, you will decide whether or not you can able to purchase this property, because depending on the breach, you may not be able to be qualified for the mortgage. And your attorney may advise you that they don't think it is wise, given the nature of the breach, that you proceed with it. We also want to do a surveyor's report and also like to check the title, because oftentimes persons are buying, for example, agricultural land and they want to build up a plaza on it. You can't do that by law. So these are the importance of why it is you need to do a surveyor's report, so all of these things can be identified. You also need to do a valuation report, because if you're taking a mortgage, for example, the mortgage company is only going to lend you a percentage of the purchase price or the mortgage price, whichever is lower. if you don't know how much it is valued, you won't have an idea as to how much you are able to come up with in case there's a shortfall, because sometimes the property may be sold for $10 million, for example, it's only valued $8 million. You are going to have to come up with that $2 million if it is that you decide to continue with the sale. Now, a good attorney, if that happens, will know how to renegotiate the contract and make it subject, for example, to mortgage approval. That is why it is critical, because there are legal consequences, that you hire a good attorney who's experienced in sales to know what clauses to be included to protect your interests. Lastly, and most importantly, we have the realtor's fee. Now, it's not like in the US here or other jurisdictions where whoever finds the realtor pays for the realtor fee. In Jamaica, traditionally, the realtor fee is paid by the vendor, because it is the vendor's property and the realtor is assisting the vendor in purchasing, in finding a purchaser. Oftentimes, this is included in the contract to ensure that the realtor is paid. And that is also a cost that the vendor has to take into account when he's doing his accounting as to how much money you would have to pay out. In addition to the taxes, he would also have to pay his realtors. So just to sum up, when buying a property in Jamaica, it is very, very critical that you hire a good attorney, because not every attorney is experienced in doing sale. And what I have found in my years of experience, that if a sale is not handled properly from the get-go, it will have legal consequences. I have had matters where persons have purchased land in Jamaica from overseas. They have met with the vendor, they shake hands, they sit down on their tree and they write a piece of paper, and all the money is paid over. And at the end of the day, not either the vendor did not have the authority to sell the property, he has not honored his gentleman's shake, or the property for which the purchaser bought does not exist. I've had cases where they have paid for land that are owned by other persons. And so what I say to my clients is that it is better you get your attorney from the get-go, because it is going to actually be cheaper. Because when you bring an attorney in at the back end to fix the problem, now you're looking at triple and double the legal fees. Now you're looking, if it cannot be resolved amicable, you have to go to court. And that court system can take 5 to 6 years. Buying a property is a great investment. It is an expensive venture. And therefore, what we highly recommend is that you secure that investment by getting an attorney to guide the process. I have seen throughout my years, I've been involved in many litigation on behalf of clients in land matters, and 90 out of 100% of the time when we're involved in those litigation is because the persons would not have had an attorney to assist them during the process. And so your risk, so as to minimize your risk, especially when you're overseas, you're not familiar with, or you have been out of the system for quite a while, so you're not so au fait with the real estate landscape and the process, hire an attorney to do the groundwork, the footwork, and to do the due diligence on your behalf. We here at MJ Law Global, we are part of a subsidiary. I'm a partner at Tameka Jordan Company, which has been around for several years. Combined with my partner, we have over 40 years experience. MJ Law Global is a firm that we have launched in the United States, specifically to service the Jamaican diaspora living overseas in many of their legal matters. And so our slogan is, your Jamaican matters simplified. Let us help you simplify your legal matters so that you can rest assured that when you get your indefeasible title, nobody can run you off the land, and you're not going to have no headache with anybody in relation to whether or not the land that you bought. What I have found, especially in the purchase of land, is that it becomes very, very complicated when there is no title for the land. I encourage people that when you are purchasing land, that you insist that they give you a title. And if they don't have a title, insist that one is had. Because especially if you're going to take a mortgage, mortgage companies are not going to lend you any money to buy unregistered land, because everybody is preparing, or everybody's aiming towards minimizing their risk. And therefore, it is very risky when you buy a land that there's no title, because any and anybody can claim it. And in Jamaica, we do have an adverse possession problem. And by adverse possession, I mean people sit on your land for 12 years and thief it. I'm not saying that with a title, it will make it impossible for that to happen, but it certainly makes it far more challenging, and it secures you. So insist that when you are seeking your properties to purchase in Jamaica, that you have land and the land is registered. Whether it's an apartment, a title can be issued for anything: land, farmland, commercial land, apartments, townhouses, standalone. From it is real estate, the National Land Agency will issue a title. And if you don't have a title for it, a trained and experienced attorney can assist you in getting that title. So if it pleases you, that is my presentation. I don't know if there are any questions. I'm not able to see the screen anymore. To the wonderful Madam Chair Lady.
Oh my, thank you so much, Tameka. That was so well handled. And you know what? There's just really one question, you know. Persons are commenting, thank you, Tameka, great information, great presentation, because so many of us find ourselves in situations where, and I believe familiarity is sometimes what causes the problem. We believe we know the person, or so as a granddaughter, man, so you let your guards down, and then when there's a challenge, you say, if me did know. And so we want to prevent the if me did know situations today. And so we thank you so much for presenting. There's only one question. What if, I don't know, but anyway, what if the person dies in the process?
Okay, if the person dies in the process, depending again on the terms of the agreement for sale, everything comes back to the agreement for sale. An experienced will anticipate that. And so, for instance, when I'm drafting my contracts, I ensure that if I'm acting for the vendor, I ensure that he has a will. In the event that he dies, estate can complete the sale. And I specifically will have that stated in the will, and I will have that in the event of a death, because under the general law, death ends a contract. However, if you specifically place it in the contract that death will not make this contract end or void, then the sale can proceed. It may be lengthened a bit in the sense that now you're dealing with the estate, but that's why, even though we're not presenting on wills, we're presenting on property. That is why it is key that persons prepare their wills. Because when you die intestate, the process is 1-2 years. If you have a will, the executor can immediately take over and complete it under the different principles of law. So yes, yes and no. If the contract allows for you to continue the sale on death, the sale may continue. If not, the contract ends, and unfortunately, depending on the terms, you may or may not get back your deposit.
Well, somebody just put in the chat, when purchasing a property in Jamaica, hire an attorney, argument done. And I believe that just done the argument right there, right? That's typical. Yes, it is. And I know, I mean, we thank you so much, Tameka, and your firm for spending the time with us today to educate us and to ensure that things are done properly, not just for us, but for future generations. Because I've seen so many situations where, you know, parents would probably pass on and then the children have such a hard time. And because we're focused too on generational wealth, it is very, very important that you were here with us today. Right? I know I have a little giveaway from you, so I believe it is fitting that I mention at this time that if anyone online today, and it's just for you, don't tell nobody else, if you subscribe today with IDS, if you sign up today with the Jamaican Diaspora en France, two together. Even if you sign up already, sign up again, subscribe again, do something. Then MJ Law Global, they were so generous. They're giving away 30 minutes of free consultation towards your purchase of your property in Jamaica. There is a passcode though. If you don't call with this passcode, when you call the firm, you will not get the prize. And the code is legal, LEGAL. So we're giving away 30 minutes free consultation for anybody who subscribes today to the integrated diaspora services, or if you sign up with the Jamaican Diaspora of France, or if you use the code legal when you do a process in terms of starting the process to purchase property in Jamaica. We are rolling. Tameka, once again, thank you so much. You know, you use language that we were able to relate to. You didn't come with the jargons that had us feeling dizzy like we needed a Nutribullet. You know, so thank you so much for the able way in which you handle it today.
I choose ideas because they bring our hearts back. Hearts back home, the place I know, the place I go. My heart's